Truth is like a ladder that we lean up against the foundation so we can get to God. But grace is the rung on the ladder that moves us closer to God. Truth by itself does not fully represent or capture God's heart. We need grace to capture His heart. Remember the meaning of grace. It's God's favor for undeserving people. I remember many years ago when my children were small, they must have been like 6 years old. The youngest was 3 years old. They were 3 years apart, 3.5 years apart. And I was teaching Bible study, and normally on midweek we'd have it. It was on Wednesday evenings. There was no West Campus at the time, just in Montclair. And so my wife would typically, the children would stay home with her and they'd do their homework and all kinds of stuff. But this time, I don't know what was going on, but the children were with me. So I'm teaching Bible study. And I was teaching on mercy and grace and what the distinction is. And I'd given out outlines and people were learning. And afterwards, Bible study ended around 8:30, 8:45. And so the kids were tired and I'm tired and they have school the next day. So I'm driving home and my foot became a little bit too heavy on the gas pedal. So I'm pushing a little bit faster than I should be. And I didn't realize I was breaking the speed limit. And all of a sudden, I see sirens behind me. I was about to get an invitation and by the police officers, give me a ticket to inviting me, you understand? And so they pulled me over and I opened the window and the officer said, "Sir, your driver's license, registration, and insurance." "How do you know about that?" "Oh, I'm sorry." And asked me for my insurance. And so I furnished all 3 items. And then he said to me, "Sir, do you realize you're going beyond the speed limit?" I said, "Sir, I didn't even realize. I was in such a hurry to get my kids home. They're tired. We just came from Bible study. And I was teaching about mercy and grace." I didn't know why I said it. I just said it. I wasn't trying to manipulate him, but I was saying I was teaching about mercy and grace. He said, "Well, tell me what that's about." I said, "There's a big difference between mercy and grace." I said, when we experience mercy, we know that we've messed up and we blew it and God pardons us. But when we experience grace, we know that we've messed up and blown it, but when God pardons us, we walk away with dignity, feeling as if we never fell short. And I said, "Officer, I'm asking you to extend grace to me today." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I know I blew it, but I want you to not give me a ticket, because I already know I blew it. And so when you usher me along my way, I drive off with dignity." He said, "Sir, I give you grace." I said, "Thank you." Now, don't you try that. That just worked that one time. I just want you to understand. But there's something about this grace thing. This grace. And so what Jesus was challenging these religious rulers to understand as he showed this woman grace, well, he's trying to show them that life is not so simple, black and white. It's not so, well, she did wrong, let's punish her. It's not so straightforward as such if you really want to live the God kind of life and you really want to emulate the Jesus way of living. It's not black and white. There's messiness when it comes to grace. There's messiness when it comes to integrating truth and grace and truth, and living with that tension between the two. And what Jesus was trying to show them, that if you guys want to be able to show the big-heartedness of God, you can't walk around throwing everybody under the bus who makes an infraction, who falls beneath the standard of God. Because if you do, you never really show God's big heart for the world. Because you're holding them to this rigid standard that you may have gotten it under your belt already, that, well, you're not committing adultery, and so this sin is unpardonable in your mind and unimaginable in your mind and abominable in your mind. But you guys are hiding, and you're hiding behind your sin of self-righteousness, and you're thinking that her big sin is big and your sin is not equal and it's not as big, and your self-righteousness is hiding the big-heartedness of God. But you can't see that you're in sin the way you judge her and deal with her, because you feel so you're standing on your soapbox thinking that you're guided by truth, but you don't realize truth without grace is painful. And so I want you to recognize that there's something that God is trying to work in our hearts. And listen to me, Christ Church. There's something that God wants to work into the DNA of our church. That's why I've titled this series A Changing Church, because I believe that God wants to change us. In what way? I'm not talking about change us in odd ways and nonsensical ways. I'm saying that there are people outside of the four walls of our church, and there are people within the four walls of our church that somehow they're not hitting the marks that God has established for them. And they could be even categorized using Jesus' words when he said to this woman, he says, go and sin no more. He used the word. He wasn't sweeping things under the rug. He wasn't ignoring her moral infraction. That word sin, the etymology or the historical foundation of the word was when an archer took his bow and arrow and shot it towards a target. When he missed the target, they said he sinned. Sin is a directional word. So a sinner is someone whose life never hits God's target. And Jesus, he didn't make her wallow in her filth, her moral infraction. He didn't throw her on the bus. He showed that there was tension between the two. And he demonstrated this tension by offering her grace. And I wonder who's in your life right now that they only know you as someone who dispenses truth, but they don't know you as someone who can dispense grace.